record. And hopefully it's recording, and if not, I'll just record later on. But
it says recording on the top.
oh, it does. Okay, it doesn't say anything on mine. So great. So we'll assume that it's recording, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
This is what I think we're going to do. And I just want to make sure that it works with all of you, which is just you, Glennie. So you get to be the decider for the entire class. This is, as you recall, this is from the very, very first class. We talked about the course description and what we were going to do, which is give you some rhetorical theory, some of the theories on how to best public speak and how to structure a speech and how to reach people. And we've done a little bit of that. We'll do a little bit more. Critical thinking, which is basically how you write your speech, mostly. I mean, there are other things that go into it, like if you walked into a room and you found it set up in a way that didn't really work for you, you might change a few things, like, I don't know, no lights in the front, or no room for you to stand for anyway during PowerPoint. So maybe you have to move some furniture, stuff like that. But also the idea of critical thinking of, well, I've got to do this to establish my credibility. I've got to do this to get them interested in the subject. I've got to write my speech like this so that it all makes sense. This sentence doesn't really make that much sense if I don't put it into context. So maybe I've got to put it into a little context before I say it. So that sort of thing is the critical thinking component that we've worked on and that we'll continue to work on. And then there's construction of the speech, which is, again, we've worked on that. Put this up front, put this in the middle, put this at the end, because the last thing people hear is the first thing they think of. When people say, how was your speech? The first thing they're going to think of is what you said last, the takeaway.
Yeah.
So we talked about construction of the speeches and also delivery of the speeches, which we've talked about. Be loud, look at the audience, don't look at the screen when you're doing a PowerPoint. Don't be afraid of them. All of that stuff. Beyonce's iPhone. That's interesting. Can you see that, Glennie?
Yeah, viewing. Let me see.
I don't know who that is. So
Beyonce and iPhones. Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, we'll find out. And then we've got on the green box right here. We talk about the informative speeches, the persuasive speeches, the impromptu speeches, and the social speeches. I think we've done 3 of those, maybe not the 4th. And the social speech is going to be the tough one to do. It's usually the last speech where you give an award to people and then they receive the award and they talk about what it's like to receive the award. So that's the one that might be a little tricky for us to get, but we've also had the impromptu. We had the one where we dragged the subject out of a hat, and that's a little social. So I don't think I'm not worried that much about the social. So this is in the course description, and then these are the course objectives, which is that you can learn to analyze an audience, which I think you've all pretty much got the idea of. Writing, organizing, and executing a speech. I think we've already got that for the most part. The verbal communication and demonstration of verbal communication skills. I think we're fine on that one. The listening skills. I think the first half of the semester, I think you've all done a pretty good job there. And then group discussion, and I think you're fine there. So I think we've achieved most of the objectives of the class already. If there's anything you'd like to work on, we can do that. But we're going to try and continue that by simply putting it online and meeting, I think, once a week instead of twice a week. I think that will take care of that objective. Does that work for you, Glennie?
Yeah.
Okay. And Carlos and G, I see you've logged into the conversation. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Carlos, you're on mute.
How about now?
Yep, perfect. So we've just started this. Little slideshow, and we've talked about basically what we wanted to achieve, and I think we're pretty much on track for it. I think we're actually, not that you'd ever want this to happen, but if it has to happen, I think we're in a pretty good spot in terms of your learning. So the grading and evaluation is going to change for the second half. We started out that it was 30 points for class participation. Now it's going to be 40. And the speeches were going to be 60%, and now they're going to be 50 because we're doing away with the final. The final was that you would present an award and then you would receive the award. So you give a little speech, and that won't be happening because we're not going to be together, and we just could, that'd be a tough one to execute. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an online presentation, and you'll basically work on how to give an online presentation versus a regular speech. So we'll talk basically about how to do it a lot in the second half. There'll be a couple of quizzes online. I usually have an essay quiz for the last one, so I'm gonna have to think about that one. But I'll give you 2 quizzes, and that'll be 10% of the grade. So everything is pretty much going as it was. The only difference is the 10 points has been moved from here to up here. So when you do the online presentation, which will be the last presentation you give, that'll only be a 10-point speech and not a 20-point speech like the award presentation was. Group learning, this is the same thing as always. Just, you know, you want to set an example. If we're having if we're doing something online, we're meeting online, show up, be active and involved, and hold others accountable, and do a good job yourself. Here's the schedule. So the week of March 30, which is this week, we're going to have this class meeting, which we've done, or we're doing. And then I'm going to give you a sales speech, and you're going to basically deliver the speech, and then you're going to judge each other on Wednesday. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to videotape your speeches. Now, a lot of you are quarantined with family, so if you want to have somebody sit in as your audience, that's fine. If not, you just videotape yourself in an empty room and deliver the sales speech. And I'm sorry, what's that?
No, somebody's talking in the back.
I'm sorry, what's that? Anyway, deliver a sales speech, and then what I want you to do is I want you guys to judge each other. And I think probably the best way to do that is to videotape the speeches. And I sent you that Dropbox link yesterday. So take your video file, and if you can, when you create the file, try and name it like, you know, Carlo Schmidt sales speech, Glennie Severino sales speech, G. Lizardo sales speech, and put it into Dropbox. And then I want you to basically have your speeches done by Wednesday at 11 o'clock. And
This Wednesday?
This Wednesday?
Yep.
Hey.
I think that's what we said. Is that what we said?
I'm not sure.
Something with those words.
We can move it if you want. What would you like to do? What would you like to move it to?
Monday?
Monday might be a little far off. How about Friday?
Friday's good.
Yeah, Friday works.
Okay, Friday. Let's say Friday at you have to basically have it in at Friday at noon. I'm gonna have to write this down just so in case I forget. So have it in by Friday at noon, and then tune in between Friday noon and how about Saturday noon? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, and listen to watch and listen to the other speeches. And I want you to judge them. And I'll send this to you I'll put it on Blackboard. You've all got access to Blackboard, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll put this on Blackboard, but I want you to listen to the speeches, and I want you to judge them based on 5 things. First is, we're going to talk about ethos, pathos, and logos, which is Aristotle. And I'll put this online too. Aristotle, who's a Greek philosopher, he has a thing called the 3 modes of persuasion or 3 means of persuasion. And the idea is that in order to be greatly persuasive, you want to have 3 things in your presentation. And of course, mostly back then, everything was oral presentation. So the first is that you have to have ethos. And ethos is really the way the audience feels about the speaker. Is the speaker, ethos loosely translated is goodness. And goodness is, if you break it down, it's credibility of the speaker, it's likability of the speaker, and it's trustworthiness of the speaker. If you don't think somebody's trustworthy, you're not necessarily going to want to give him your money to buy a used car. If you don't think that he's credible, you may not want to vote for him to hold an office. And if he's trying to if he's trying to start a program in Lawrence, let's say, and you're the decider about whether or not you fund his idea for a program, if you don't think he's got the credibility to bring it home, or or if you just don't like him, you might be less likely to go along with it. So that's ethos. And again, ethos and ethics, you see how close they are? But really, ethos is goodness. And the reason I mentioned that a second time is because it'll be on the quiz. On the week of, I'm sorry. So you want to have ethos, I'm sorry. Then you also want to have pathos, which is emotion, an emotional component. And that is really getting us to care. In journalism, we call it putting a human face in the story. And the idea is, if I have statistics on coronavirus, all they are is numbers. All they are is numbers. But if I say, I know a guy who got this, and it made him so sick, and it killed him, and he leaves behind a family, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, then maybe you feel badly about the guy. And that creates an emotion, and that emotion gets you to care about what we're talking about. So the idea of it is, sometimes the emotion is happiness, sometimes the emotion is sadness, sometimes it's empathy, but you want to tap into that emotion to get people to care and get people to understand the need for whatever it is you're trying to do. Then finally, there's logos. And of course, logos, you think logic, and logic is reasoning. And really what logos is reasoning. Within your speech, there've got to be reasons. This is a problem because blank, blank, and blank. We can fix this problem because of blank, blank, and blank. So there's reasoning there. And the reason you should support me, the reason you should buy my pen, the reason you should elect me to whatever the offices I'm running for is because of blank, blank, blank. So there's a reasoning that says, this project has worked in other places. We've tested this in the lab and we've got this result. We ran this program in Chicago, which is very similar to Boston, and therefore we think it was successful in Chicago. Here are the results. We think it will be successful in Boston for the same reason. So there's got to be a reasoning there as well. So Aristotle's three means of persuasion are ethos, which is goodness, and it relates to the speaker. Pathos, which relates to the whole presentation, which is emotion, emotional component. And finally, logos, which is reasoning. So when you judge other people's speeches, their sales speeches, then you want to look for, does the speaker establish his or her ethos? Do they use pathos to get the listener involved? And finally, is the logos, is the reasoning strong? Does the logic behind it make sense? Does he or she make the points he's trying to make, and is it convincing? So those are the three things you want to look at. Then the other two things that you want to add to that are, when you watch the speeches, think, does the speaker have a strategy? If I'm trying to sell a pen, and I say, I'm not trying to sell these pens. Pens are things with ink in them that you can use to write. The pen was invented, blank, 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 which is kind of that information dump that you're used to seeing in speeches in high school, where somebody just talks about it and then they say, who'd like, and that's my pen, buy one at the store. Well, that's not really too persuasive. No one's going to be persuaded to buy your pen based on that. But if you say, this is the greatest pen ever made, and I'll tell you why, or they say, I'm going to tell you about, or they're going to say, if they start out, they say, I'm a student, blah, 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 and whenever I need a pen, it doesn't write. Or whenever I need a pen on a rainy day, it doesn't write. Or I have pens and they're not effective for what I need until this one. I created this pen myself. It has space-age technology. It can write underwater. It can write upside down. This is the greatest pen ever, blah, blah, blah. Then I talk about the pen. That's a strategy, and that's being used to sell the pen. So you want to make sure that I've got a strategy in whatever my speech is. And then the final thing is you've got to ask for the order, which is basically in class what we do is we have people say, who would like to raise their hand? Excuse me, who would like to raise their hand to buy this pen? You won't be asked to raise your hands, but you do want to ask the audience to buy it. So make sure somewhere in your speech at the end, it says, so who would like to buy my pen? Simple line, get it in there, and make sure you've got the ask for the offer. There's a famous story in politics, an old politician named Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House at one point. He talked about in his very first election, his next door neighbor didn't vote for him, and he said, well, why didn't you vote for me? And the next door neighbor said, well, you never asked me. You never asked me to vote for you. And so make sure you ask. What happens a lot is students will give they'll do a pretty good presentation, and then they'll say, so buy it at the grocery store. So make sure the next time you're out, you buy this. We don't want that. We want you to ask people directly to buy the pen from you or buy whatever you're selling. So does that make sense to one and all?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry, what was the fourth one?
The fourth one was strategy. And the strategy can be whatever you like, as long as we identify that you're actually trying to sell the pen. Sometimes people will do, usually the most common one is, are you feeling stressed? Would you like to get away? Well, I've got a great way for you to get away, and it's not going to be very expensive. Or like you feel the stress, you'd like to get away, but you don't have the money. I have a great way for you to get away. Dominican Republic. It's inexpensive. The flights are cheap right now, and it's an island paradise. And then you go on and you talk about how great this resort is or that resort is in the Dominican. So there's clearly a strategy, which is you've set up a problem, and now you're giving us a solution. Or in my pen example, the problem is my pen doesn't write when it's wet. My pen doesn't write upside down. My pen doesn't write for the uses. It's not effective for the uses that I have in that I need it to be effective for. So that way, that's problem and solution. That's the most common one. There are others, which is, I've always wanted to build a better pen, the better mousetrap thing. Other things are fine, but have you ever wanted to ride in the best car, the Jaguar, something like that? So that's the other thing that people will do sometimes is they'll just do the better mousetrap strategy. But as long as there's a strategy, as long as we can tell you're trying to sell it to us, you're good. So think about how you're going to do it, and think about the best way to be most effective. And when you prepare your speech, you want to have that in there. And then when you watch speeches, think, is he or is she actually trying to sell us things, or are they just kind of telling us things? So those are the 5 things you want to look at. So when you watch a speech and you look for these 5 things, once you see it, you kind of mark it down. You put a little, okay, he's got that. It's either pass. It's either you get a point for it or you don't get a point for it. So let's say Carlos goes first, and he does all of the elements, so he gets a 5. And then Glennie goes second, or let's say you look at Glennie's speech second, and you say, well, Glennie was great, but she didn't ask to buy, so she only gets 4 points. Then obviously the winner there is Carlos, who gets 5 points. But let's say Glennie's perfect and Carlos is perfect, so they both got 5. Then you've got to judge which of them you thought was most effective. And at that point, you want to email me the answer of who was most effective, how many points everybody got, and which one you thought was the most effective speaker. You want to email that to me. And what I'll do, let's say you email that to me between Friday and Saturday from noon to noon. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Saturday at noon. So then on Saturday afternoon or sometime between Saturday afternoon and Monday, I take a look at it. I total up the scores, and then whoever the winner is becomes wins a contest, which in class we usually give people a Burger King crown to wear. I'm not sure what we're going to do. Probably nothing for online, but you get to brag. You get to brag that you're the most persuasive speaker in the class, and there's always a value in that. So are we good on that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yep.
So for like the speeches that we weren't able to get done, like for example, I still haven't presented my comedy speech. Would
Yeah.
I be able to make that up, or is that like
Yep.
long gone now?
No, if you want to make anything up, you can make it up. Just make sure you slug it properly, like, Glennie Severino humor speech, if you can. If you can't, sometimes making videos, they don't allow you to, or it's
I
trickier than
think you
others.
should go live right now.
I'm sorry, say it again.
That you should go right now.
Does somebody want to go right now?
Yeah, why not?
Well, I gave you the option of the video, so I don't want to take it away from you now. But Glennie, you've got to do your humor speech?
No, I did my humor speech.
Okay.
I need to do mine, but I'm not gonna do that right now. I'm not prepared.
If you want to do it, G, just do this, just videotape it and send it, put it in the same Dropbox and just slug it, humor. And so people will know when they look at it, because you don't want them looking at it going, this is not persuasive at all, but it's funny. But just do it that way. And the time for the persuasive speeches, I was just thinking the 2-minute speech. Is that good for everybody?
Yes.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And by 2 minutes, I mean, somewhere between 1:45 and 2:15, 15 seconds either way. But try to do it in 2 minutes. And again, the advantage of video is if you screw it up, you can do it again.
Yeah.
If it goes too long or it goes too short, you can look at it and go, oh, wow, this is not good. And so 2 minutes. And like I said, and we look for those 5 things, really specifically the big 3 are ethos, pathos, and logos. But you also want to have those other things too, just so we can identify it as a strong speech, just to give us other things to look at. So that's what we want for the next one. We good on that one?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, what's the deadline?
Friday.
Saturday, 12 to 12.
Friday. at
Friday
noon.
12
Friday.
to
Friday at noon to get the speech in, Saturday at noon to judge the speeches.
Okay.
And you judge the speeches, you send me an email with everybody's score. I want everybody's score because I want to be able to look, and let's say Carlos gets a 5, a 5, and a 4, and Glennie gets a 5, a 4, and a 4, or whatever. At least then I can kind of count everybody's speech and get an average. I've had situations before where, I've got 20 students and someone's getting a 3 on one scorecard and a 5 on other scorecards. And so, you add them all up and you average them, and that way, by having everybody score versus just the winner. But I want you, basically, when you send me an email, I want it to say, winner Carlos, and then underneath it, I want to see Carlos 5 points, Glennie 5 points, G 5 points. And then I know that you thought they were all good, but you thought that Carlos was most effective. Or maybe it says Carlos 4, Glennie 2, G 1. And I know that you recognize that these 2 other speeches were kind of dogs. But again, I think they're all going to be, generally, they're all pretty good. I mean, people, when you give them specific things to think about, they've still got things like, maybe they don't. Oh, and this is the other thing. You can take this from your own experience, but if you want to say, I've been a salesman for this company for 10 years, or I invented this product, or if you want to make something up about the product, you can. How about the products? Should I let you pick what you're going to sell, or should I tell you what you're going to sell?
I think it'll be more challenging if you pick it.
You think it would be more what?
Challenging if you pick it, because what if 2 people end up picking the same thing?
That's a good point. Okay. Is that good for everybody?
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Is it better for me to put out something on Blackboard with your name and the item you're selling, or the service that you're selling? Or would you rather I send it to you in an email and didn't tell the rest of the class what you were doing?
Either way.
The elements, yeah.
Yeah, whatever's easier for you. Doesn't matter to me.
Okay. I'm going to walk around my apartment and look at things, and I'll come up with a list and I'll send it to you separate. I'll send you all separate emails, and And that will have the item or the service that you're going to sell. And I actually, the reason that I pick sales and I pick items and services, and the reason, usually what I do is you basically write things in a hat, and we could do it that way if you'd like. You can all send me an email with with an item or a service. You can send it to me, and then I can assign it to somebody who isn't you. Like Carlos, you can send me something that says, you know, rocking chairs, and then I can give it to Glennie, and Glennie can send something that says rubber balls, and I can give it to G, and G can send me something like, you know, trips to Aruba, and I could give that to Carlos. If you would like to do it that way, we could replicate the idea of writing things and put them in a hat. The advantage, the reason I always have people write it and put it into a hat is it's twofold. First is I want to get something you don't care about, because I don't want you to argue or persuade us about anything you care about, because then emotions take over often. And what I want you to do is I want you to be dispassionate for whatever you're trying to persuade us to do. I want you to not care about it. But on the other hand, I want you to have to think about which emotions you would tap into if you were trying to persuade us to buy a car, buy life insurance, you know, attend an event. I want you to basically kind of intellectualize it and not use a lot of emotion. So I guess the question is, do you want to send me something and I'll pick it, or do you want me to just pick it?
Pick it.
Pick it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just pick it.
All right, I'll pick it. I'll send it to you later on today, this afternoon. Later today, send items. Okay, I'll send that by email before 2 today. And all right, so that's the first one. So do by Friday at noon. Watch them and you know, give people a score by Saturday at noon. Leonardo will have one as well. He's not going to join us for these sessions, but he's going to do the assignments, and his sister's going to videotape them. So that's that's this week. Next week, we're going to meet at the same time on Monday, 11 o'clock. We're going to talk a lot about speech construction, and I'm trying to think of what this other word is. Oh,
The end?
I went to the, what's that?
No, it says the end. So
Yeah, hold on. Let's see if I can get rid. Man, this is the problem with this online stuff. Worst for me is I'm online and I'm not on my own computer. I'm on my daughter's computer because it's got a camera. So it's a little jumpier than mine. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more. Oh, it's quiz. The Q is for quiz. There's going to be a quiz next week.
Next
And-
week?
Yep.
when?
Yep, we'll review. I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll review in the class meeting on Monday. We'll review what we've learned, and then we'll talk about speech construction. And then I think if we need a little bit more, I might do a video presentation that I'll have you watch with some things about speech construction in it. And then we'll take a quiz. So we'll meet on Monday. We won't meet on Wednesday, but there will be a quiz on Wednesday. So you guys will take the quiz on Wednesday. And there might be an additional video as well that you'll watch on your own. And maybe a couple of links to YouTube things. Like I think Barack Obama's three great speaking tips and things like that. So I'll give you a few of those to watch over the course of the next 5 weeks. That'll mostly deal with ideas for speech construction. And hopefully you'll find that helpful. Then the week of April 12th, which is the week after that, the third week that we meet, we're going to do open topic speeches. And because it depends, if we get all 10 students, we might do it a little differently. I might just have you videotape it and not have a meeting. But I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure about that one. If you three and Carlos, you three and Leonardo are the only 4 students in the class, then we'll probably do that in one day and we'll spend the other day in a meeting or something like that. But there'll be no actual, there'll be no class meeting on the week of April 12th unless you 4 are the only 4 students in the class. Then the week of April 21, April 20th is Patriots Day. So we don't meet on April 20th, but we'll meet on April 22. We'll have a meeting then, and we'll talk about presenting online, which is a little bit different. And then we'll do an online presentations between the week of April 26th and May 5th. There'll be another essay quiz, and that'll pretty much wrap up the class. So there's not a whole lot of work to be done, but there's enough that we can, we'll continue to progress, and it'll be no heavy lifting as long as you do the work. But please do the work, and we'll at least continue to, I think, prepare you guys for presentations for the future. Does that work for everybody? Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah.
Are we
Okay.
meeting this Wednesday?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Are we meeting this Wednesday?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, we're not going to meet. You guys are just going to do the speeches. Then you're going to judge the speeches. You're going to do that by Friday at noon, and then by Saturday at noon. And then next week we'll meet again.
Okay.
I know it seems really, really light, and I've got to kind of watch that, particularly when you guys are such a small group. But I think it'll work. I think it'll work, and I think it'll give you, about maybe somewhere between 2 and 4 hours a week of work. And I think it'll accomplish the objectives of the class, which are to get you basically thinking a little bit more about speeches and having a better foundation for strategy for when you do speeches in your junior and senior year. So are we all good?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. All right. Let's see if this video, this will be if this did video, I'll put this online and you can judge it again, or if you have to go back to it. If not, I will put the PowerPoint online on Blackboard, and I'll have something with Aristotle, the three means of persuasion, and the assignment. I'll put that on Blackboard later today. Good for all?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, good. And when I send you emails and they have links on them to watch this speech or that speech, just make sure you watch it, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
And everybody's doing okay, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, so far so good.
Okay.
No one over here.
Are you all, is anyone losing track of days yet?
Oh, super. Like since last week.
How about the sleep cycles? Is anybody's sleep cycle off?
Extremely fucked up. I think this is the earliest I've woken up in a week.
Yeah, I'm having the same problem. There are some days I'm asleep at 11 o'clock, and then there are other days that I'm asleep at 11 a.m.
Literally.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week, and we'll be in contact before then.
Okay.
right,
See you on
guys.
Monday.
Take
Stay
care.
safe, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. You too.